Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll talk about Victorian values and especially the aspects of Victorian values concerning private life. This will be mostly based on quite an old book by Walter Houghton called The Victorian Frame of Mind. After the lockdown is finished, you can go to the Institute Library or to the British Study Centre and read it. It's not particularly easy read, but it's quite interesting and well argued and well documented with 19th century examples. So the first observation that he makes about the Victorian worldview, the Victorian world picture, is that the 19th century was the age of dualities, and especially the Victorian period was the age of dualities. So everything in culture, different aspects of culture, could be could result in equal measures almost in optimism and anxiety. So, on one hand, there was a great belief in progress, there was a great belief in the social development, in the economical growth, in the technological discoveries and inventions, and basically this was the moment when people started to believe they could realize their ambitions. On the other hand, the old certainties of the world, like the religious certainties, the social certainties, were certain no longer. So it resulted in a lot of doubt, in a lot of self questioning, in a lot of anxiety, fear sometimes. So if we look at some of these aspects, for example, if we look at social progress, this is the first moment in the history of Western world in which people normally did not expect to spend their entire lives in the social group they were born into. So like later in the early 20th century, you have the American dream and from rags to riches. This is actually the development of the Victorian idea of social progress, the idea of self-betterment, self-education, and the strong conviction that if you are ambitious, if you are hardworking, and perhaps you have a little bit of luck, you can really improve your own situation and your family's situation. So, on the other hand, of course, the same uh, could result in anxiety and fear for the future, because if you did not succeed, you were to be blamed for it. If you were not successful, it wasn't that you were not lucky. It was that you were not working hard enough, or you were not talented enough. You were to blame for your own misfortune. And the misfortune in the Victorian period could be very painful indeed. This is the time before the most of the modern, I would say, social security measures. Before old age pensions, sickness benefits, maternity benefits, any kind of social welfare. So, what you had to rely on was mostly your own family, because not even your local community, that was a very important source of support in bad times earlier, because after the Industrial Revolution we have massive migrations of the people. So we have industrialization and urbanization within the 19th century, uh, British economy is completely changed from an traditional agricultural economy to the modern industrial economy, and by the end of the century, the vast majority of people, like three quarters, lived in cities. And the life in cities was much different socially and emotionally to what it was in small towns or villages when you knew your neighbors, when you had to keep some social norms, but you could help and you could count on the help of your neighbors and your local community. This is not happening in modern Victorian cities, especially big cities like London or sprawling industrial cities like Manchester or Birmingham, in which the poverty is huge, in which you actually have people dying from starvation in the streets. So, if you are not successful at work as a businessman, you could fall really very, very fast and very painfully. And the only way of obtaining social charity was through a very notorious Victorian institution of the workhouse. You probably heard about it already. This is one of the most notorious institutions in British social history. This was a new invention introduced just a few years before Queen Victoria's accession in 1837 uh, to provide some sort of help for the homeless and the destitute, something that earlier was dealt with by local communities, local parishes, religious institutions. Now, with the urbanized world, it was such a big problem that the state decided to do something about it, and the only thing they could do was to establish big institutions which were closer to prisons than some sort of comfortable shelters for the poor. So only if you were faced with starvation, with actual death, you might be persuaded to join the workhouse. So we have optimism and anxiety. So if we look at religion, for example, in the old world, religious dogma was not questioned, except for some intellectuals, perhaps who followed the age of reason philosophy, but the majority of people did not question religious dogma. In the Victorian society, it is much more problematic, and the majority of people, the educated middle class, those who take interest in science, who follow, for example, the scientific innovations, such as the discoveries of Charles Darwin and his work on the theory of evolution, they start doubting religious dogmas, such as the special position of humans in the world, the existence of the soul, the existence of afterlife. So even the hope for salvation after death is really put to doubt. On the other hand, there is a growing fear in the society, even among those who had religious doubts, that if everybody abandons religion, especially the poor, the working class, the colonized peoples, the women, the servants. If everybody abandons religion, the society will become completely ungovernable. So it will result in another bloody revolution, in some sort of deep social unrest, and this should be prevented. So we have, as Walter Houghton notices, a society of religious doubters who, nevertheless, in their majority, go to church every Sunday. Especially the middle class, they absolutely go to church every Sunday, even if they do not believe in the religious dogma anymore. They do it to set the good example to the servants, to the workers, to the poor, basically to the children as well. So that's the first part, and we continue in a moment.